to The Problem Was Me. I'm your host, Tom Gagliano. I'm a best-selling author, family dynamics expert, and social worker. And we'll be discussing childhood messages and their impact on addiction, the intimacy we have or don't have, our parenting skills, the careers we choose, even the roles we're set up to play in life. Do you put other people's needs ahead of your own? Do you have a hard time sharing your feelings? Do you feel invisible? Do you have a hard time saying no to others? Do you have an inner voice screaming for help, but yet you're so afraid of allowing others to hear this voice? Well, you've come to the right show. I'll be touching upon these issues and much more from my personal and professional experiences to help you end the negative self-talk and take your life to a new level. The Problem Was Me starts now. Hi, welcome to The Problem Was Me, with me, your host, Tom Gagliano. So today we're going to focus on parenting skills. Now I'm going to give you 7 tools that'll help you enhance your parenting skills. And we'll have some poll questions. Now, this is not to judge you as a parent. My God, parenting is really, really tough. It's not to say that our parents weren't good parents. It's to look at the messages that we want to hold on to and what messages we need to identify that maybe need a little tweaking that can help. Okay, so we're going to go to the 7 poll questions in a minute. But first, I want to tell you a little bit of a story that was very profound in my life. My son was about 8 years old. We were watching a baseball game, and he said to me, "Hey, Dad, how come the kids in the stand root so hard for their favorite baseball player?" So I said, "Those baseball players are the heroes." He stopped and was thinking about what I said. And the next thing he said was very, very profound, and I'll never forget it. He said, "Dad, they might be my heroes someday, but you're always going to be my first hero." Yeah, we are our children's first heroes. We show them how to view the world, how the world views us. And we can't help but putting our expectations into their diaper, our fears into their diaper. That's why I wrote my book. Don't put your crap in your kid's diaper. You know why? Because a cleanup course is going to last a lifetime. We're all human, and we want the best for our children. So before we get to those poll questions, I want to go over just some things to take out. Now, remember, when we go to those 7 questions, take out what you can use that can help you. Leave the rest right here. You don't have to agree with everything I say. So one of the suggestions I want to make to you, a little self-awareness, is we're more aware of how we show up with our children. But are we fully aware of how the version of emotional intimacy we have with others, with our spouse, our parents, with everybody else, how that affects our children? Believe me, they're market researchers. They're watching us. They're watching how we cope with life, with difficulties, how we put boundaries down, what role we're playing, people pleaser, caretaker, victim role, addictive role, invisible role. They're watching all of this stuff. And all the actions are being recorded in their young minds and will happen to them when they have intimate relationships in their adult life. Look, we all as children, when we get afraid, we go to our self-survival mechanisms. What did we do as children? Did we shut down, run away, get angry? What did we do? And it was okay as a child. We protected ourselves. But now when we grow up, how are those same actions affecting us in our intimate relationships? Are they working? So be aware of the version of intimacy that you're showing your kids as an adult. My version was terrible. My parents fought, hit each other. It was a disaster. My definition of intimacy was fear, pain, run away. I don't think that's the definition in the dictionary. So be aware of that. Another point, we can't control our children's behaviors for long, because eventually they're going to do what they want to do, not what we tell them to do. What we need to do is teach our children how to control their own behaviors. What do I mean by that? Where they want to make healthy decisions because they want to, not because they're forced to. That's what we want. A child that builds self-esteem and integrity, that makes the right decisions because they want to, not because they need to. Very important point. And another point, when your child struggles, let them get out of their own messes. That doesn't mean don't talk to them. That doesn't mean if they're in impending danger, don't go in and save them. Your job as a parent is to keep them safe, but don't initially fix everything. Ask them, what do you think you should do? Brainstorm with them. Teach them how to have coping mechanisms. So when they grow up and you're not there, they have coping mechanisms. Parents come to me all the time, and I'll hear this all the time. A parent will say, I don't understand. Tom, Sue, Beth, Jerry, whatever. They're always angry at me. And I was the one that always stepped in and took care of everything. That's why they're angry at you. Now they're older and they don't have coping mechanisms. They don't know how to take care of anything. So be aware. Let them try to get out of their own messes. That doesn't mean if they're in trouble, you step in. Talk to them. What do you think you should do? Brainstorm with them. So we're going to go to the poll questions now. But I want to tell you one thing. If the conversations you're having with your children are not working, maybe we need to work on changing the conversations a little bit. What do you think of that idea? So when I go through these poll questions, it's not a test. It's just to bring more awareness out. And as I said before, take what you can that you can use and leave the rest. So the first poll question is create a safe environment for your children where they come to you and they feel like they could talk to you about what's going on in their life, about sex, politics, prejudice, terrorism, whatever it is that's bothering them. We want to create that open avenue. Very important what I'm going to say. A child that feels like their feelings matter, feel like they matter. A child that feels like they don't matter to their parents won't stop loving their parents. They'll stop loving themselves. I'm going to say it again. A child that feels like their feelings matter, they'll feel like they matter. A child that doesn't feel like they matter to their parents won't stop loving their parents. They'll stop loving themselves. This is when they start to act in with depressions and anxiety, and they start to act out with addictions. And look, there's always mental illnesses, and that can't be helped. There's genetics involved here. I know that. Please, I'm not putting that to the side. But right now, we're talking about the messages that we can give our children that'll help them. Because at the end of the day, do we want our children to come to us with their issues to talk about, or do we want them to solicit information and validation from the wrong people? We want them to come to us. So let's take a peek at the poll questions. The first question, you create a safe place for your child so you can come to you with your feelings. 1, never. 2, sometimes. 3, most of the time. 4, always. So see what you come up with that and work on that if you see you're in the 1, 2, or even 3 category. That's all. Take what you can, leave the rest. Let's go to the second question. Confer regularly with your inner child. What does that mean? It means when you see your child suffering, before you rush in and fix everything, ask yourself this question. What would I want to hear from my mom or dad at that age if I was struggling? Maybe they failed a test they studied for. They missed a shot at the end of the basketball game. They struck out. Maybe somebody broke their heart. Think about if that happened to you, what would you want to hear from your parents? Let that compassion guide what you say and the way you say it. Let's go to another story. I'm going to go to a baseball story. My youngest son, he was the head pitcher in his little league. And in a playoff game, he pitched and he couldn't get the ball over the plate. And the team lost because of that. And I remember saying to myself, boy, he's really hurting right now. And I was walking to the dugout to pick him up after the game. And I said to myself, what should I do? Should I wear my therapist hat and ask him how he feels? Ask him what's going on? Should I wear my pitching coach hat? Maybe help him with his follow through. What should I do? Well, let's go back to question 1 for a minute. I created a safe place for my son to tell me how he felt. When I walked into that dugout, he taught me a lesson that I had forgotten. He walked over to me and he said, Dad, I need a hug. He needed a hug from his first hero. It's all he needed. He didn't need a pitching coach. He didn't need a therapist. He needed what I probably needed when I was a child if I was really struggling with something, a hug from his first hero. And I took a look at all the kids around this that were looking at this experience, like they didn't know how to make ends meet with this. How many of them would have wanted a hug from their dad or mom when they struggled? I coached a lot of my kids' teams, and what I saw dads and moms do really was so hurtful. Putting all of their lives and expectations into their children on the ball field, on the basketball courts, where their children were suffering so much trying to live up to their parents' expectations. I want to tell you something. Sports should be fun, not painful. And a lot of kids dropped out of sports early because it was too painful and it wasn't fun enough. So you got to watch the expectations we put into our children. And if we create the first one, create a safe place, the second one becomes easier. Let them tell you what they need. Plenty of time to fix them, plenty of time to tell them what to do. But pause and let compassion guide what you say. Now, I want to take a second to talk about divorce. If you're in a breakup or a divorce with your partner, husband, wife, whoever, three things I want to tell you real quick. One, keep telling that child it's not their fault. Children are egocentric. They think everything's about them. My son at 5 years old said, Dad, what do you get me for Father's Day? They're egocentric. Keep telling them it's not their fault. Number two, don't manipulate them to find out what your ex is doing. Don't do that. They're going to feel like they don't matter to you, that only you are important. What you want is important. And trust me, they'll learn to manipulate others in their adult life. And number three, if you do have another relationship with somebody, never forget that you were their first heroes. Remember to be there for them because you'll always be their first hero. So those are some of the tips if you're in a breakup or a divorce. So let's go to the poll questions. Confirm regularly with your inner child. Number one, never. Two, sometimes. Three, most of the time. Four, always. Pause and know when you need to show up and give your children what they need. So we're going to talk next about being curious with your children. That means know what sites they're on, know what computer sites they're on, know who their friends are. I know we don't have a lot of time with our children, but we can give them quality time, not quantity time. Ask them, what was the best part of your day? What was the worst part of your day? Communicate with your children. Keep that curiosity going. It's very important to know what's going on with your children. You know, that computer is very powerful, but it can be very deadly as well. We have kids going on porn at 11 years old. We have teenagers teenage girls in high school getting, it's called dysmorphia. Let me see, I always get this wrong. Snapchat dysmorphia, where they're getting plastic surgery in high school to meet what they want to see in Instagram and Facebook, to look at other people. This is dangerous. And this is scary. So pay attention and be curious with your children. Ask them a lot of questions. Believe me, my daughters tell me a lot more than I want to know. Trust me, they tell me everything. But it's good. The more you listen to your children, the more your children will listen to you. And that's a fact. That's what will happen. So make sure you keep that line of communication open and ask questions. Be curious, be curious, be curious. Let's go to the poll questions. Never. One. Sometimes I'm curious. Three, most of the time. Four, always. Now, we're going to take a short break, and I'm going to come back and I'll give you a little story about how to be curious with your children and what worked for me in an experience situation I had with my son in the 8th grade. Please come back and join me. Thank you. So I wanted to touch a little more on question 3, being curious with your children, because in the 8th grade, my son came to me and said, hey, Dad, a lot of my friends smoke pot, marijuana, whatever it's called today, and it was illegal at the time. And I wanted to tell him as a recovering addict, go in your room until you're 26 years old. That's what I wanted to tell him, right? It scared the hell out of me. But I said, first, thank you for coming to me. I appreciate that you trust me enough to talk to me about this. And we went on curious. We went online. We looked at pot, marijuana. And I said to him, you know, a lot of people that start with that end up with other drugs. Not all the time, but they do. And they ruin their life. So I want you to be aware of that. And I also told him choices. We'll get more into this later in the podcast. But the choices you make have the consequences that you have. If you choose to break the law, you choose to get in trouble. So we had a nice talk, whatever. And a couple of weeks later, I went to him. I says, hey, how you doing with that, with the pot and stuff, with your friends? And he said to me, Dad, I don't hang around with those kids anymore. The moral of the story is he made that decision, not me. He chose the right decision to do, not me. So be curious with your children. Talk to them. Don't always tell them what to do. Again, we want to create a child that makes the right decisions because they want to, not because we're forcing them to. So I'm going to go to 4 now. Monitor your inner critic. The most important relationship you have is the one you have with yourself. You're the key ingredient and a common denominator in all your relationships. So be mindful of the messages you could be passing down to your children. A very positive message is that when you struggle, you're willing to get help. You're willing to seek professional help, healthy people. to teach them that. If I'm smoking and tell my kids not to smoke, it's not going to go over too well. If I'm on the phone all day and telling them not to be on the phone, it's not going to go over too well. So be mindful of the messages that you might be handing out to your children. And a beautiful message is when you're struggling, ask for help. The right people, the healthy people out there. So let's go to the polls and look at one, never. Do you ever ask for help when you're struggling? Sometimes you do. Most of the time you do, or always you do. So that's number 4. And I called it monitoring your inner critic. In my book, The Problem Was Me, I talk about 3 keys: awareness, action, and maintenance. I got to be aware of what I have to work on. That brings the better actions and behaviors. And then if I maintain them, the 3rd piece, I create healthy habits. We want our children to develop healthy habits, to make the right decisions because they want to, not because they're forced to. Again, that's number 4. Let's go to 5. Choose your battles. If you always want to be right with your children, always, they're not going to talk to you. They're just not. So choose your battles. Know when you need to enforce yourself and when you need to listen. Again, the more you listen to your children, the more they'll listen to you. Again, another story. My son was in a junior in high school and everybody was telling him what to do. Go to the services, go to college, go to this, go to that. And he was getting sick of it. And I came to him one day and I said, it's got to be so hard for you at your age. All of these things, people telling you what to do. And he said, Dad, that's how I feel. I can't handle it anymore. I'm going crazy with everybody telling me this stuff. And you know what happened from that? That was good. He kept talking to me and talking to me and talking to me. And then he decided to go to college. He decided to go to college. And like I said, my daughters tell me more than I want to know. There's times it's like enough information, but better that than the other way. So number 5, choose your battles. Never. Sometimes choose my battles. Most of the time. 4, always. These are the poll questions on the side. 6, mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. It's human to make mistakes. We have to give our children the message that you can make a mistake. It doesn't mean you are a mistake. I felt like I was a mistake as a kid. You can fail at times. It doesn't mean you are a failure. So mistakes, the healthy child will look at a mistake, say, okay, where did I could have done it differently? What was the opportunity? An unhealthy child just falls into, I am a mistake and I'm not going to try again. So give your children the message that they can make a mistake. Doesn't mean they are a mistake. Now, I'm going to go into consequences in a minute, but first, another story. This was a good one, but didn't turn out as well as I thought. My son had a bedwetting problem. He would come to the room in the middle of the night, and I'd get angry. Not good, shouldn't have did it, but I did. Changing the sheets, the whole thing. So one day we went to dinner with my brothers, their family, 10 of us. I went into the bathroom, and guys will understand this. I zipped up a little bit too quick, and I got some urine on my pants. I went to the table and I said, look, even daddies make mistakes. Now, he thought this was the best thing since chopped liver. He started to crack up. He loved this. The whole story was great until the end. What I didn't anticipate was he was going to tell the whole table, look, my dad peed in his pants. Listen, everything doesn't work out exactly as you plan. But the point is, I showed him humility that I could make a mistake too. Now, I wanted to say something about consequences. Give your children consequences based on the choices they make. If you don't put your toys away, you're not playing with your toys the next day. If you don't come in at 11 o'clock like we agreed, you can't go out the next day. Choices, consequences based on the choices they make. Pause, don't yell, scream, make it clear. Now, here's an important piece too. Healthy boundaries. Your boundaries should be short and specific and fair. If your child argues with you on the boundaries you set, do not defend yourself. Do not explain yourself. Say, listen, if you're going to keep arguing, now you have another day tacked onto that. Or now you have another day, you didn't clean your room, you're not getting your allowance. You're going to argue, you're not going to get your allowance for two weeks. So consequences based on the choices they make is very important. So let's go. Number 6, permit mistakes. 1, never. 2, sometimes. 3, most of the time. 4, always. Do we allow them to make mistakes and give them choices, consequences based on the choices they make? Let's go to number 7. Celebrate your child's victories. When they're young, they walk in the room, yell their name out. Hey, Sue, Jim, Bill, whatever. Make them feel important when they walk in the room and celebrate what they think is victories, not what you think. Maybe they color in the line. Good job. Maybe they got a B on a test they broke their back for. Good job. Celebrate the things that they feel they've accomplished. Now, remember something, okay? I don't like everybody gets a trophy. I don't like that. We don't celebrate mediocrity, and children have to learn that you will fail in life. What do I do when I fail? Do I get up, brush myself off, learn what I could do better, or do I get paralyzed and never try again? So that's why I don't like the trophy thing. I don't think that's very helpful to the child, okay? Celebrate the victories, what they think is a victory, not just what you think is a victory. Now, I want to make a little suggestion here. If you have a child that gets A's in school or is gifted in sports, remember the siblings are watching how you react to that child. Don't say, I'm so proud of you that you got A's. Don't say, I'm so proud of you that you hit a home run. Rather, say, I'm proud that you try so hard in whatever you do. Every child can try hard, but not every child can get A's. Not every child could perform great in sports. Be careful of how you validate one, because the other's listening. Again, they're little market researchers. So be careful of how you give affirmations and how you give validation, because the other one's listening. All children can try as hard as they can, but not all children can get A's, and not all children can excel in sports. So look at the poll questions. How do I do that? How do I celebrate my child's victories? Never. 2, sometimes. 3, most of the time. 4, always. So these are the 7 little tips, suggestions. Take what you can, leave the rest, that might help you change the conversations with your child if the conversations aren't working. So I want to then talk about my next podcast. The next podcast, we're going to talk about addiction. I'm a recovering addict. So we're going to talk about not only how to get sober, but how to stay sober. 2 different things. And that means to become congruent. Addicts are fragmented, like myself. We split into 2, and we won't let anybody inside. Congruency comes when we say what we mean what we say. We're going to talk in that podcast also about the adaptive role that the person plays around the addict, which isn't healthy either. What's the difference between enabling and helping the addict? What's the difference between codependency and empathy? What's the difference between self-care and selfish? Could get very confusing. So in the next podcast, we're going to talk about addictive thinking, and we're going to talk about the groups that I have, how I've helped so many men and women become congruent. Learn how to have conversations like an adult, not like a scared little kid that wants to run to an addiction. So I hope you join me on The Problem Was Me for our next podcast. The first, I always get this one, the first week, the first Tuesday of the month. I hope you join me. And I hope whatever we did today will help you in your life. Thank you for joining me. You've been listening to The Problem Was Me with me, the host, Tom Gagliano. Tune in every first and third Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time on the Transformation Talk Radio as I help you break the cycle of negative and addictive thinking affecting the emotional intimacy you have, your parenting skills, the careers you choose, even the roles you were set up to play. As a high-profile leader in addiction and self-help, I've helped develop unique methods and procedures which have helped numerous institutions and individuals. For more information on how I can assist you creating a healthier life, visit theproblemwasme.com.